whatever. Like, there are so many people here in this group that know so much about organizing, and some of them have only been learning since April, but like I only started organizing in April in my building, and like I feel like I know that we have a lot of knowledge to share. And so if anyone here is interested in organizing their building, organizing in their neighborhood, meeting other people who are already organizing in their neighborhood, get in touch. We're on Instagram, Twitter, our Facebook group, and just message us individually. I think a lot of us met new people today. I did, and that's really exciting. I met people I didn't even know their neighborhoods were organizing. And so it's really important we organize, but if you don't know how or you're unsure of how to start, get in touch. And yeah, get in touch.
Yeah, sure. So we called a public rally at City Hall, which was sort of a decoy. And we met at City Hall at 7, and then we walked over here in 2 groups and then took both the entrance and the exit of the parking garage. So when an eviction is ordered by the Landlord and Tenant Board, it is then enforced by sheriffs. There are a few sheriffs here in Toronto. They work here at the courthouse. And on Tuesdays to Fridays, 9 to 5, they enforce evictions. So they leave this parking garage with their city or whatever, like their company cars, and then they go all across the city to enforce evictions all day. And so today we have stopped them from enforcing any evictions today. But we're also sending a message to the sheriffs, one, that they should not be enforcing evictions, that they should join us, and they should consider refusing to enforce evictions during COVID. And then I guess in general to raise awareness and things, but mostly our goal was to stop the sheriffs from enforcing evictions.
I think tenants across the city can support each other even if they're not facing these issues themselves, and I think that's what's needed. But we do know that there were over 6,000 eviction notices that were issued in the midst of the lockdown or the eviction moratorium, and that means that there's thousands more to be issued because a lot of these corporate landlords have been waiting for the board to open up so they can start these eviction notices. And we had been tabling in our neighborhood over the weekend to reach out to more neighbors. And I think a lot of people are in this situation where they've agreed to a repayment plan with their landlord. And now since the board has opened up again, their landlord says, well, pay it all up now, and kind of taken their word back on these repayment plans and are still going to try to pursue evictions, even though they've agreed to set up some sort of plan in the beginning. And I think that's what's so dangerous about like Bill 184, and essentially how it gives the power to landlords to come up with these repayment plans, which are pretty much just 200% of rent the next month. Like in the beginning of the pandemic, our landlord had suggested just a 2-week deferral, and we told her we're not getting our jobs back in 2 weeks. But yeah, there's no way for someone to agree or pay what is agreed upon in these repayment plans if they've fully lost work. And also, like in the beginning, like politicians and John Tory and Doug Ford had told landlords and tenants to work together to sign these repayment plans. And even those tenants that did do that in good faith are now being screwed over and getting evicted, even though they have made payments throughout the moratorium.
I've been rent striking since January with my building over a number of issues that are ongoing, unresolved, very serious, and their pointed method of communicating, which is to ghost us and dead end us and never get an answer, and to refuse to communicate with us as a group of tenants over mutual concerns. And one of the main mutual concerns that we had were over television screens that were installed in our elevators earlier this year, which we felt were an invasion of our privacy. We were told that they weren't videotaping, but in the end we found out that our images were being used for demographic information and purposes, for marketing purposes. So we'd been lied to by management, and then also the content of it was questionable. And when I complained about the content and was like, this is triggering me, I was told there was nothing that could be done. Yeah, and the indignity of not being able to have an actual conversation with somebody, the indignity of being just like passed down the line to email addresses that are people who no longer work for the company, or just being told that you're being passed on to upper management and then never being contacted is unacceptable. You know, like housing is not a human right in our Constitution in Canada. But how can we not expect more of our landlords? How can we not expect more of the people that are making a huge amount of money off of something that is like a basic need in people's lives? At the very least, like I live in a very nice building and I live in a nice neighborhood and an up and coming neighborhood at Dundas and Dufferin. And but I pay a lot of money for a very small amount of space. And it's a nice space, but I think that the bare minimum that should be expected of that is observing the human rights conditions and like all of the laws that we have in place in terms of the way that we're meant to communicate with people and give due respect to people. And if we can't like raise the ante and up the ante in those situations, I don't know where we can.
My name is Hisham Al-Asbashi.
And why are you here today?
We are here protesting against the sheriff. He wants to take out the people from their apartments, and that's not fair. When the COVID it still exists, and the people they are suffering to stay alive, just to stay alive. Like who can afford the rent, and who can pay for his rent always when the COVID is here, and you don't have job. And when you lose your job, you are out of anything. Or even if you are living on ODSP or OW, you cannot find anyone to hire you. Like I'm trying since 2 years to find the job. Even I have the experience about everything, and they saw me and they saw everything good. Just because I don't have enough experience in Canada, so they will not. I'm from Syria. I came to Canada from 25th of June 2018. I moved into here, and since that time I'm trying to apply for many jobs. I go to there, they make everything with me. After I finish, they tell me keep looking. But we don't need anyone now. After they ask, and you don't have like experience here in Canada, they will tell you, no, you are not for us.
A lot of what's been happening in the larger sphere, like I think the rent strike is really indicative of a situation in Toronto that is becoming increasingly untenable.
I have been keeping my rent since April. My job has disappeared because of COVID, and it's not coming back once CERB ends. So the thing that made most sense for me was to keep my money for the things I needed in case more money wasn't coming in, which so far hasn't. And yeah, I haven't received an eviction notice yet because my landlord is trying to get people to sign repayment plans, but I will receive one eventually.
And as a musician and as a self-employed person and as an arts worker, I was sort of told this myth. I think there's like a twofold myth. One is that you're signing up for a life of insecurity, and that's just your lot in life if you're going to choose it. That's just like your price to pay for following your dream. And the second myth that you're told is that if you're a successful artist, you'll beat all the odds anyways, and you'll be able to have all of the middle-class lifestyle and dreams and riches and securities that everybody else has if you make it. But when we look at like the differential between the fact that minimum wage has increased 46% since the 70s, but rent in Toronto has increased 158%, I think, since the same year, since the 1970s. That's already showing us that like the standards aren't keeping up with the standards, right? Minimum wage is supposed to like support a whole household of people with one person working for 40 hours a week in just a baseline job. That's what it's supposed to get us.
I'm trying, not just for me, I'm standing for everyone, for all the people that they cannot afford to pay all of their rent. to help them and to prevent the sheriff from going out and take the people out of their homes. And I'm engaged in York Southwestern Tenant Union. We help the people, we advise them about their rights, about how they can deal with their landlords, with the remaining tenants. We help them to organize themselves in groups so they can find their landlord more stronger, and he will be afraid from them, and he will not evict them, not at all, but he will be conscious every time he wants to send an eviction letter.
Yeah, so Fight Back, we're a Marxist organization of student and labor activists. We go wherever there is a fight to be fought, and we participate as supporters. We have ideas of our own that we raise that we believe are important ideas for every particular movement related to its eventual success or failure. And so, for example, in the context of this renters or tenant movement, we raised the demands, obviously, to organize tenants and for a rent strike. You know, that's already happening. We don't have to tell people to do that. People are already doing that on their own. But we also raised larger demands, such as a national program of social housing, as well as to nationalize the big landlords and put the big buildings, apartment buildings, under democratic tenants control and organization.
Are there examples of that being done successfully?
Yeah, I think that's happening right now. I think in Parkdale, for example, there's a lot of efforts to organize the tenants. And we're not directly involved in that, but we're certainly following it and we're supporting it. And you know, if anywhere where we come in is with these larger political and social demands, which of course, you know, have to be tied to a larger political and social movement.
So everyone here is a tenant, basically, and all the organizers are also organizing in their own buildings. So I am an organizer at my building. It's called West Lodge Towers. It's in Parkdale, and many of my neighbors have not been able to pay their rent or haven't been able to pay their rent in full during COVID. But I'm also part of the broader team of Keep Your Rent organizers across Toronto.
Currently, our landlord has issued us an N5 and an N7, which allows her to circumvent the eviction ban. And her reasons were direct involvement with Keep Your Rent, 14 other reasons that we believe are not grounds for eviction, like smelling and eating a flower. But I believe that it's in response to our organizing efforts and us trying to pressure her in the beginning to provide some sort of rent relief.
Yeah, we are trying to help, not just me, we are trying to help everyone to fight about their rights, to know more about their rights. Like today, I was inviting lot of my friends on the group to join us, to join this movement, because it's very important to show the city, to show the government, to show everyone that we are united, we are standing for everyone. And in that way, the people, they will encourage to come with us more. And the landlord, I'm seeing it like it's a dream to see everything happening in the best way.
Even in the wording of the notices, like one of them says, she accuses us of having meetings on the property, Keep Your Rent meetings on the property, and then she says, which you are the head leaders of. So it's pretty clear that she's targeting us for trying.
So I think, you know, our movement does not exist in isolation from the wider Canadian working class. In fact, you know, as the crisis of capitalism in this country intensifies, it sort of has the effect of waking people up and having, you know, people actually ask questions about society and the way that our society is run. And so we are, you know, we consider ourselves to be, you know, organic members of the Canadian working class and of, you know, the different, you know, social and political movements that arise to fight, you know, capitalist injustice and exploitation. And so we are merely, you know, we are there to answer those questions when they arise. And we build our organization as a result, on the basis of education and political activism and connecting with the working class. Because really, if we don't achieve this, then we can't really meaningfully talk about any sort of socialist revolution or political transformation of society. We have to be a part of the working class movement and a part of the movement of the most oppressed and downtrodden layers in society.
And this like race to the bottom, this idea that workers are at the mercy of their employers and that it's all about like hard work, and if you're a hard worker then you'll be appreciated by your employer and you'll work up the natural like ladder of meritocracy that we think is fair and even and equitable. Or we now know isn't, but we've been told this lie and we have to unprogram that from ourselves. And it's the same programming that says, oh, if you're a successful, decent, honest human being, then you should make enough to cover your expenses and then you should pay your rent. And that's just like this basic thing you do and it makes you a good person. But we don't want to pick apart the idea that the system is broken and that we've been participating in it for a long time. And so I'm coming up with this like against a lot of people that I know, a lot of people that I really thought were like in the general camp of like, yeah, we're on board with human rights, that are all of a sudden like, well, shouldn't CERB cover it? Like, aren't you asking for a lot? Like, can't $2,000 cover your expenses? Not at all understanding the differential between like what their jobs are and what my jobs are, or even the idea that that we're beholden to this payment, and so all of a sudden people here, we're standing here and we're not making ourselves beholden to that payment, and a lot of people are like, whoa, wait. Like, if that's the case, then why am I the chump that's been like buying into this system and just paying higher and higher and higher and higher in rents and like not standing up for myself and just sort of being like, well, this is the way it is. I'm just gonna like keep like on the hamster wheel, But I think the thing that really conflated it, or like that really intersected for me, was this idea of like where you fit in society. And if you are like a middle class person, then you got circa, because your wages got, you had a wage, you had like an income to replace 70% of a year. And it puts you in this place where we're like, oh, well, that's an honorable thing. But when you're getting $2,000 a month as a quote handout, or like as this like, you don't have to give anything back for it, quote unquote. Again, people get so upset. And so like the classism of it really shows, but then it intersects here because they're like, well, you're getting free money from the government, so shouldn't you be meeting your bills? But that's not the issue. That's not what this is about. This is about like recognizing the way that the system is skewed for like commercial landlords and investment landlords, and that if we want our city to be vibrant, if we want our city to have artists, if we want our city to have people of all different backgrounds and races and cultural identities, gender identities, being able to not only just live in this city and survive in the city, but thrive in this city so that we can benefit from all of those people in the way that we're like, oh, it's such a diverse city. We speak 82 languages in Toronto. Well, that's great, but if like 70 of them are in homeless encampments, what kind of a legacy is that? What are we saying about our city?
Most of our income goes to rent. So at that point, we had decided to withhold rent while we do negotiations with our landlord. We had reached out to other people in our neighborhood that had been also affected by job loss or lower income. And we had sent like a collective letter to our landlords saying that tenants in the annex are willing to support each other if it comes to harassment or any sort of retaliatory actions from these landlords. And our landlord immediately responded with her first eviction notice, which was the first N7. And she had cited direct involvement with Keep Your Rent, postering in the neighborhood, and then also a police visit to our house because my partner had been assaulted while we were postering, saying that we were putting the safety of other tenants in our house at risk. And that one she had rescinded due to public pressure. So we spoke out in the community, and we spoke out on media, and she had got, like, a reporter had reached out to her about it. She told them directly that her intention was to serve for non-payment of rent. She received some public backlash for this eviction notice that she had issued, and she dropped it and rescinded it at that point. But now here we are with another one. Yeah.
And so I got to the point where I didn't want to have to take the paying gigs over the gigs that I felt musically invested in. And at the time I was sort of teaching, like building up my teaching career, and so I spent a long time teaching. And that was amazing and incredible, but I realized at a certain point that I wasn't also fulfilling myself and I needed to kind of like shift the balance again. So one of the things that I really endeavored to be able to do was to tour and to play gigs that it wasn't as much maybe about the pay or even like the theater, the status of how many tickets were selling, or like, you know, the soft seat theater vibe, whatever it was, but just like the integrity of what I was doing and really feeling like I was like doing something that I felt really committed to and felt really proud to be presenting, and also that there was an audience for it and that I was presenting to, like, you know, people who were getting to hear that music. So I was reaching that point, you know, like definitely like had a lot of things, like some really incredible experiences, some really formative opportunities, some great moments to connect with people like across the country and around the world. And in January and February, I went to the Banff Center for the Arts for the first time. It's like a dream I've had for 15 years. And I finally went there. I did a residency, and and then I drove back across the country. I played 2 weeks worth of gigs, and then COVID happened. And so I was looking at a whole season of, I had 2 back-to-back theater runs, I had a lot of local gigs, I had some festival stuff in the summer, I had a residency, and then I was meant to be playing 6 nights a week with a queer songbook in Edinburgh.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
And then for all of August, and then subbing out of that to go just pop over to Australia to do like 7 days with Glenn, and then come back, play Edinburgh with Glenn, and then do a Glenn tour in the UK and Europe, and then teach in Germany, and do another tour with a band called Culture Reject that's been trying to go to Europe for years, and we finally got funding. So it was like the year of a lifetime that I'd been building up to, and everything that I'd sort of been like, a lot of things that I'd been really gunning for, and like overnight it was just decimated. So that's like, it's hard to even really conceptualize that and take that in. But immediately I knew that I couldn't just like sit at home and try to replace that right away. So I started working in a grocery store that's run by dear, beautiful people, musical, like people that I know in the community. Just being connected to community, doing something that was very intentional, that was like an essential job in the moment, that was clear cut and just kept my mind focused and was like, okay, today I go to the store, I get people food, that's an essential thing. Kept me super sane and really helped me to kind of like process. And so, and I spent a lot of time talking to my therapist on the phone about like, what does it mean to be an artist in a pandemic? And I think like what it means is to just like keep challenging yourself in the way that you look at the world, and to keep like, I've been really thinking a lot about what it means to like be a creative, to be an improviser, to be not only like an arts worker, but like an arts liver. And if I'm not like doing it through the bass or even through writing songs, like what have all the opportunities of being a musician afforded me, like to get to this unique place, an intersection in time and space, and like of all of my combined experiences, that can help me to be impactful and useful right now. And in some ways that's writing songs. Like I did write a song for my new lover, and recorded it and did like a little project with that, and I'm doing like some on-site recordings with people like in the woods, and so there's like creativity is coming through, but I didn't make like making music my objective. I made like seeing the world with a creative, inquisitive lens, and also to be like continue to feel like a creator.
But the reality is that we're really only at the sort of edge of the cliff right now, and there's really nowhere to go but down for the Canadian working class. And the cruel irony of it all is that the rich are only getting richer in this context. Warren Buffett, I think it was Warren Buffett, made $13 billion in the context of the COVID crisis, which is absolutely absurd, and I think demonstrates the bankruptness of this system. And so, as far as how we're doing, I mean, of course, we're doing well because we're talking about an alternative to the system, and more and more people are looking for that alternative today than ever before. I mean, we've definitely we have more interest now than I think we have had at any point in the history of our organization over the past 20 years or so.
So there's a Facebook group called Keep Your Rent Toronto, or I think just Keep Your Rent. There's a Facebook group called Keep Your Rent. And on that Facebook group, we post details about actions like this. We post details about email zaps or phone zaps against landlords to pressure them to come to the table, or to pressure them to drop eviction notices, or to pressure them to back off from harassment. Like we know back in May, I believe, like Pinedale representatives have been going door to door with a debit machine harassing people. So there's a phone zap against them, for example. There are files in the Facebook group that have different flyers that you could give to people in your building, different posters you can give to people in your building, and just resources for how to reach out to your neighbors.
When I talked about us being a part of, the movement of the oppressed and marginalized, tenants are working class in most cases, but even when they're not, even when they're unemployed, on welfare, on state assistance, they are still a part of the oppressed and most downtrodden layers of society. And so we fight for all of those individuals and those groups, and we consider it our obligation to be a part of a movement like this, which is incredibly progressive, and that can actually be linked up to a fight against the broader capitalist system, we believe.
When you are making good art, but you're trying so hard to fit it into this thing that's commercial and that makes money, and you're defining your success by that parameter, that you ruin it for yourself. Like you kill the thing that you love, and not in a good way. You don't kill your darlings, you kill the whole lot. Like I just see people like torture themselves, and I've been there. Like that's definitely been part of like my mental health journey, is sorting that out, and I'm really grateful that I've had a lot of amazing family and friends and mentors and people who've been through it, and healthcare workers that have helped me sort that out, so that this time around I could go, okay, you know what, like the gigs that I have, or the records that I make, or the shows that I play, or the money that I earn is not who I am. It's not my worth. It's not my worth in society. It's not my self-worth. It's not like inextricably wrapped up in like my value as a human being to just be here and have like the right to housing and the right to healthcare and the right to like a basic income in a pandemic. And so when you start from that place, then I've been able to kind of like build it back up. But mostly I've just been making my art, like posting, like reading articles and trying to engage with them and trying to engage with people in my community. And like I've really like developed a relationship with my MP's office, Julie Zarowitz, and with her liaison in Ottawa, this really great guy named Nasser, and together we're starting a LGBTQ advisory panel for our riding. It'll be the first one that any of the MPs have, so we're going to be like a queer council to Julie Zarowitz to tell her like what the word is on the street.
For that?
Pardon me?
Is there a name for that yet? Or is there any presence online yet?
No, it's just about like the first meeting is going to happen in the next couple weeks. Yeah. And then, I mean, there was just like a post to join the group. Yeah. But we'll get some presence online once we know what we want to be present about.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. So just like trying to be creative and intentional and communicative and like thoughtful and think about like structures and freedom within all of it. That's all like jazz. That's all improvising, you know? So yeah, and now picking up my instrument again feels really nice.
And do you get any disagreements
course.
when you're at something like this? Yeah.
Of course, yeah.
What kind of disagreement do you encounter?
Well, you know, there's some people that believe that it's enough to simply reform the system. You know, that by having more rent controls, more tenant rights, or other things like this, that we can somehow live in harmony with the landlords and with the capitalists. And for us, we simply believe that this is not possible, that all history indicates otherwise. But in terms of people that hold those beliefs, that is totally fine. I think, in fighting on a specific issue like against evictions, we can fight together for that specific cause, so long as we're able to bring our own ideas into the movement and to raise our ideas and to fight for our ideas if necessary. I think it's totally healthy in the history of the workers' movement to have internal debates within our own movement about what is the best way forward. And if it comes down to it, to have democratic structures that allow us to decide and move forward in a united fashion.
Thank you.
All right, cheers.
Do you want to add anything? Do you?
No, I think, yeah, no,
Okay. Thank you.
What's your name, man?
Morgan.
Morgan?
Yeah.
I'm Donovan.
Cheers. Donovan. Cheers.
Brendan.
Brendan. Nice to meet you guys. Thank you.
Roll this up.
Thanks for your time.